They start getting intimate, but Raywat pushes Kwon away and tells him to stop. Kwon says they should continue a bit more and tries to kiss her, but she bites him and says she's had enough. Raywat asks when the man Kwon hit will wake up. Kwon replies that he needs to make sure he cracks the man's skull and lets him sleep deeply. Lee warns him that if he continues like that, he'll end up in prison. Raywat thinks she might have made a mistake by biting him and asks if she hurt him. Kwon says her teeth are so small that it's not noticeable, and adds that next time she should leave bruises. Raywat firmly tells him there won't be a next time. It turns out that ever since Raywat mentioned she'd interview for a job at the cafe, Kwon It had already bought it from the owner. No wonder the owner seemed overly eager to pass her in the interview. Before she knows it, the day for the arranged meeting with her father arrives. Raywat looks into the freezer and asks why Kwon bought so much Kantori. She thinks to herself that, despite his appearance, Kwon It is always considerate. He carefully chose a ring design that wouldn't interfere with her drawing. He also bought the cafe and didn't push the boss position on her. Instead, he hired a former longtime employee, gave them a generous salary, and made them the manager. Thanks to that, Raywat only has to carry the title of boss and work in the mornings. He even created a place for Raywat to work without any hassle. He buys a lot of Kantori because she mentioned she liked it. He can scare people in strange ways, acting rough enough to surprise someone. He engages in vulgar behavior with a fiery expression, but is not afraid of Les Junghwan. Raywat recalls when she spoke to her father. Kwon willingly believes words that nobody else believes. He shows unexpected consideration, which actually scares Raywat. His actions are stimulating and inspiring, making her think he might disrupt her mental stability, like the impulsive kiss in the cafe. Meanwhile, Kwon walks towards her. Kwon asks Raywat if she saw the kanjoki he bought. She corrects him, saying it's not kanjoki. He then asks what it is, maybe kandoki. He notices her looking at him and asks if it's because he's wearing a suit. He jokes that she didn't care when he was walking around half naked. She replies that she was concerned even then, thinking he might be an exhibitionist. Kwon laughs and reminds her that she wanted to go to the shop before going to the hotel, so they should get going to avoid being late. The arranged meeting place is the DS Hotel in the Gangbuk district. Known for its spacious greenery and views of the Han River, it's a top-notch hotel with a long history and tradition. Raywat's mother's exhibitions were always held there. When they arrive, they meet a butler who offers to guide them. Since the meeting is at the DS Hotel, Raywat thinks her father probably won't be the only one coming. Considering the hotel's owner is Lee Hak-soo, his wife Kang Myok and daughter Lee Seon might also show up. They both walk into a room and see Kang Myok. Kang Myok welcomes Raywat and tells her that the chairman might be a little late. She says that after hearing they would meet at a hotel, she decided to come to greet the chairman and see Raywat after a long time. She adds that apart from times like this, it's hard for them to see each other. Raywat agrees. Kang Myok asks Raywat why she doesn't keep in touch more often and shows her disappointment. She mentions that Raywat has gained some weight and advises her to take care of herself. She says that even with her tall stature, a little weight gain is noticeable. Kang Myok adds that Seon looks cute with a bit of chubbiness because she's small, but Raywat needs to stay slim to be pretty. Raywat thinks to herself that Kang Myok hasn't changed at all. The door opens and Seon comes in, saying hello to Raywat. She also greets Mr. It and adds that she didn't have a chance to greet him properly before. Seon asks Kwon It if he remembers her because she remembered him right away, and then says they got engaged before. Raywat starts laughing, but Seon insists it's true and asks again if he doesn't remember her. Raywat thinks to herself that it doesn't seem like Seon is lying because she isn't good at controlling her expressions. If she were lying, it would be obvious. And if it were a lie that would be exposed easily, Kang Myok would have stopped her first. Seon tells Kwon that she hasn't told the chairman who he is, and that no one really knows him except for her and her mom. Even her dad doesn't know him. Kwon asks what she wants him to do. Seon is surprised by the question and says she'll keep it a secret for him. Kwon then asks if she's threatening him and wonders if he should threaten her back. Kang Myok steps in front of her daughter and says that Seon wasn't threatening him. She explains that she just wanted to meet him. Kang Myok mentions that she tried to contact him but couldn't get through at all. She adds that since he's always with Raywat, it's hard for them to meet separately. Kang Myok explains that it might be hard to remember since it was 10 years ago, but there was an engagement between their families. She wanted to greet him because she found the connection interesting. Kwon asks if it was really 10 years ago. Kang Myok agrees and tells him to think carefully. Kwon says he doesn't remember the engagement, but he vaguely remembers someone coming and begging for something. Raywat calls Kwon and asks him what's going on. He says it's nothing but a misunderstanding. Raywat thinks to herself that something seems to be happening in Kwon's dark eyes. He seems to have something to hide, and if she digs now, she might uncover his secret. But she knows that if she does, he could get hurt, and she doesn't want that. So, she just says okay. Seon gets angry and asks if Raywat is pretending nothing is wrong and if she thinks Seon is lying about being engaged to Mr. Kwon. Raywat replies that she should assume everything Seon said is true because she really doesn't care. She tells Seon to stop being interested in someone else's husband and asks why she's acting so pathetic. Seon starts crying and asks if what Raywat said isn't too harsh. Kang Myok comforts Seon and tells her she's kind-hearted. Then, Kang Myok turns to Raywat and asks why she's showing her vulgar and crude side. Just then, the chairman walks in through the door. Kang Myok welcomes the chairman and says she was waiting to greet him briefly. The chairman asks about Haksu, and Kang Myok explains that he traveled abroad for a while because something urgent came up. The chairman then asks why Seon is crying. Seon tries to explain, but Kang Myok says that Raywat said something harsh and that Seon is too soft-hearted and gets hurt easily. She adds that it's natural for kids to have fights and tells him not to worry about it. The chairman asks if Raywat has anything to say, but she stays quiet. Kang Myok says she will quickly help the kids make up. However, the chairman interrupts her by slapping her. He says that even though her children don't know much, she should have made sure Seon didn't act thoughtlessly in front of Raywat. Kang Myok apologizes to the chairman, admitting she was short-sighted. Then she goes over to apologize to Raywat. But Raywat is actually disgusted. Kang Myok asks if Raywat has a headache or feels dizzy. Raywat thinks it's not just Kang Myok's pathetic look that bothers her. It's the fact that her dad created this whole mess. To everyone else, he seems like a perfect dad who always protects and cares for his daughter. But he's ruthless about even the smallest mistakes. Raywat feels like he's intentionally pushing people away from her, pretending it's all about protection. It seems like he wants to be the only one left in her life. Raywat tells Kang Myok that she's fine and doesn't have any pain. Then, Raywat tells the chairman that they came for a pre-engagement meeting, and this whole commotion is making things awkward in front of her future husband. The chairman agrees with her. Kang Myok says that she and Seon will be leaving now. The chairman then tells the waiter to serve the meal and bring the flowers. The waiter says okay and places the flowers in front of Raywat. The chairman mentions that it's been a while since he saw Raywat and he didn't want to come empty-handed, so he brought flowers that he knows she likes. Raywat thinks to herself that she might throw up and is having trouble breathing. She really wants to get out of the room to escape the smell of the flowers, but Kwon is holding her hand. The chairman says that Raywat's mom also loved flowers and he feels lucky to have Raywat since Seoyeon left. He wonders what he would have done if Raywat hadn't been there and adds that he sees her as the last gift her mom gave him. The waiters start serving the food. The chairman mentions that although this is a pre-engagement meeting, it seems pretty simple. Kwon asks his father-in-law if he didn't know Kwon was an orphan. The chairman says he figured it out when they talked on the phone and adds that Kwon is pretty straightforward. He then asks Raywat if she's doing okay. Raywat replies that she's feeling mentally stable now that she's with someone she loves and says he doesn't need to worry. The chairman tells her she still needs to see a doctor, but she says it's not necessary. He asks if she's still having delusions, like thinking he broke her finger. She says that's a lie and asks if he's still denying it. Kwon It then calls his father-in-law and asks if he wants to step outside for a cigarette with him. Kwon It steps outside to call Choi Jung and complains that his eyes feel like they're about to pop out. Choi tells him that there's no lens thinner than this one, it's the latest ultra-thin camera. Kwon explains that there are fewer bodyguards than he expected, but they're all armed with gas guns. He adds that it's funny to see the naive idea that he can control everything just by having more people. Choi says the meeting was pretty intense. He adds that Lee Jung-hwan slapped Kang Myok, and from what he can see, Lee Jung-hwan seems to care a lot about her. Choi wonders why she's in such bad shape, especially since Kwon had a chance to talk. He suggests they should find out who's telling the truth. The chairman walks over to Kwon and tells him that he did some checking and found that everything about Kwon is fake. He says Kwon has been using a false identity since he turned 18 and couldn't find any information about what he did before that. He admits that he's never been unable to find any information like this before and asks Kwon what kind of person he really is. Kwon asks what the chairman means and says he's just a guy who stole his daughter. The chairman agrees and says he wants to be honest too. He says he doesn't approve of Kwon and adds that Kwon should think about it from his own perspective. He asks if Kwon would send his own precious daughter to someone like him. Kwon says it would probably be different if he were in the chairman's place. The chairman says that since Raewot likes Kwon, he's willing to accept their relationship. He suggests they should find a way to make things work and tells Kwon to bring Raewot to live in his house. Kwon thinks that the conversation is going as he expected. He asks his father-in-law if it isn't too much to ask for a newlywed couple to live with their in-laws. The chairman says Kwon has some misconceptions and shouldn't be so hostile. He adds that if Kwon really loves Raewot, he should trust him instead. The chairman explains that Raewot might say strange things about him, but she has some mental health issues. He says she even had inpatient treatment but is still very unstable. He finishes by saying that Kwon shouldn't believe everything Raewot says just because he loves her. Kwon calls the chairman father-in-law and tells him to be quiet for now. The chairman is shocked. Kwon then asks if he really broke Raewot's fingers. The chairman asks if Raewot didn't tell him that she lost her childhood memories. He explains that Raewot was in a mental hospital because she saw her mother commit suicide. The shock was so intense that she lost her memories and started having delusions. He says he didn't break her finger. Instead, after her mother's death, Raewot tried to draw like her mother and hurt her finger by bumping into something when he tried to stop her. Because of this trauma, she couldn't draw for a while and still holds a grudge and tells lies about him. The chairman adds that her delusions have gotten worse, so she had to be hospitalized again for a while. Kwon punches the chairman, and the guards shout to protect him. Kwon tells the chairman not to worry, saying he doesn't need guns to handle them. Choi calls Kwon a crazy bastard and points out that he came for a meeting but now it's like a funeral. Kwon beats up all the men and asks his father-in-law if that's all he can bring. He tells him that he cares about Raewot a lot and is willing to listen to whatever she says. Unless she says with her own words that she wants to go home, it might be hard for him to go to his father-in-law's house. Kwon also feels that his father-in-law is lying about breaking Raewot's finger. Kwon decides to make a bet with his father-in-law. Choi tells Kwon that he can't risk his whole life because of this and asks how Kwon could just beat up the chairman without thinking. Kwon asks for May, and Choi says she and Schmidt are delaying their entry into the country to look into the collector Lu Jin. Kwon tells Choi to have May find out how much of what Lee Jung-hwan said is true and how much is a lie. Kwon thinks Lee Jung-hwan is definitely lying, but there seems to be some truth mixed in. Choi warns that digging deeper might be illegal and asks if they should still go ahead. Kwon says yes, they should proceed. He tells Choi to investigate the hospital where Raewot was admitted more thoroughly and says he will visit there personally soon. Choi says he understands but points out that Kwon usually stays calm and collected no matter what the other person says. He asks why Kwon is so impulsive now. Kwon brushes off the question, saying he's off work today and they should discuss the remaining work tomorrow. Choi says he understands. Kwon asks himself why he's acting so strangely when it comes to anything related to Raewot. It feels like he's about to lose his temper. It bothers him, and he gets too involved, which makes him even more provoked and eventually leads him to act impulsively. He opens the door to meet Raewot. Raewot asks if it's over. Kwon is still thinking to himself that he has had his share of craziness before, but when he looks into her eyes, he feels an overwhelming surge of emotions that he can't quite understand. He wonders what he should do about her. He finally answers her question, saying the meeting is over and they should go home. They both get into the car, and Raewot calls Kwon. As she waits for him to answer, She thinks about all the questions she wants to ask. She wants to know about the engagement with Lee Seon, what Kwon talked about with her father, and why he doesn't ask about her past. But she can't bring herself to say anything. She still doesn't have the courage. Instead, Raewot asks Kwon if he'd like to have a drink with her. He thinks she's really strange for asking that. Raewot wonders if it's odd to make such an offer. Then she asks if he wants to eat ramen. Kwon asks why she keeps making people misunderstand her. She questions what ramen has to do with it, and he asks if she doesn't watch movies. She says she only watches action movies. He tells her not to say things like that to other people, and she agrees. When they get home, Kwon asks Raewot if she's going to have the ramen. After they eat, he mentions that he hasn't had ramen in a while and didn't realize it was so spicy. Raewot asks if it's too spicy and offers him some milk. Kwon says it's okay, and Raewot tells him he's cute. Kwon frowns. Kwon leans forward and says they've had their ramen, so now can they have a drink? Raewot agrees. Kwon suggests they drink on the second floor. Raewot reminds him that he said the second floor is dangerous. Kwon says it's okay if she follows him. They go upstairs, and Raewot sees a collection of guns. She says it feels like a scene from a movie and asks if you can buy guns in Korea. Kwon explains that there are usually a lot of second-hand guns coming from Russia to Korea, but his are from his private collection. Raewot asks if he knows how to use all of them. Kwon asks if she wants him to show her by shooting them one by one. Raewot says there's no need. Kwon tells Raewot that if she finds a gun she likes, he'll give it to her. She says there's no need and that she doesn't even know how to shoot. Kwon says he'll teach her, and if there's someone she wants to kill, she should shoot them. Raewot asks if there's someone Kwon wants to shoot. He says there was. She asks if he doesn't want to shoot them anymore, and he says no because he has already killed them. Kwon asks if Raewot isn't surprised. She says she is and wonders if it isn't strange for someone like him to spare the person he wants to kill. Kwon agrees that she has a point. She then asks why he killed them. Kwon explains that it wasn't planned or an accident but more like negligence. She asks if they were family, and he says yes, then asks how she knew. Raewot says she has experienced something similar and wants to know what she talked about with her father. Raewot wonders if Kwon It thinks she's lying too, if he believes she's just saying nonsense and making things up because she's delusional. Kwon tells Raewot that her father was talking nonsense but asks why her father broke her finger. Raewot explains to Kwon that her father, Lee Jung-hwan, secretly caught her setting up an art studio and drawing. He was worried that Raewot would turn out like her mother, and he didn't want to lose her. But Raewot couldn't believe it. She asks how someone can break their daughter's finger and send her to a mental hospital. Raewot tells Kwon that she doesn't remember anything from before her mother died. Her childhood memories are scattered and incomplete. She only clearly remembers the moment her mother passed away. She thinks that her strong urge to draw might be an unconscious effort to recover those lost memories, which has driven her to the edge of madness. Raewot tells Kwon that her hands naturally want to draw, but she also feels a strong, frightening need to draw. Every time she tries, her father questions why she wants to remember painful memories. Even though it feels like she has to recover those memories, it seems like there's a truth she doesn't know, and no one has told her why her mother died in front of her. Raewot feels like a fool but says she will still try her best to draw Kwon well. Kwon grabs her hand, and she thinks to herself that his eyes are heavy, deep, and have a slight bluish tint. She wonders if she can capture the color of his eyes in her drawing. Raewot touches Kwon's face and tells him his eyes are very pretty. She asks if he can give them to her. He laughs and says she can't take his eyeballs out, but he'll give her something else instead, and then he kisses her. He says that the sofa is small because it's meant for only one person, and then he picks her up and sits her on his lap. Kwon tells Raewot that he wants to see her painting next time. She says she doesn't want to because she'll feel embarrassed. He asks why, and she explains that she's worried he might look at her strangely. Kwon starts leaving bite marks on spots where they can be seen. She asks him to leave them where they'll be visible, but he moves to places where the marks won't show. They start getting intimate, but she tells him to stop. Kwon says she's in big trouble for seducing him so carelessly and just touches her. Kwon decides to use protection despite Raewa's protests, and they get intimate for the first time. Raywat keeps begging him to stop, and after a while, he does. She feels like it's over, but he isn't finished yet. The next morning, Raywat wakes up and remembers that she slept with Kwon It. It was rough and intense, and her whole body aches. Her lower region feels sore and swollen. She notices she's dressed and wonders if Kwon cleaned her up. Kwon tells Raywat to stop moving around because she might hurt herself if they do it again. She thinks to herself that if he had any conscience, he wouldn't say that. Raywat gets out of bed and picks up a cigarette. She asks Kwon if he's still smoking it. He asks if she remembers anything or if anything is coming to her mind. She says no. He then asks if she wants to try smoking, and even though she says no, she suddenly has a flashback. In her flashback, Raywat feels the humid air and feels the hot sun beating down. She sees small patches of shade and hears the leaves rustling in the breeze, with sunlight filtering through them. She sees a young boy who looks innocent but has visible bruises on his body. He seems so fragile, as if he could break at any moment. Under the bright sunlight, his face is covered in shadows, and he says he'll kill her. Then, the flashback shifts to her mother at the moment of her death. Presently, Kwon It calls her name and asks if she's okay. Raywat thinks to herself that the last memory blocking her mind is the final image of her mother. She tells Kwon that she's fine and apologizes for what happened. Kwon asks what mistake she's referring to. Raywat explains that she made a mistake yesterday while under the influence of alcohol. He then asks if she is going to act like she doesn't remember anything after being with him. She asks what he means. He wonders if she didn't enjoy it. Raywat replies that it's not that. Kwon says he thought they had a good experience since she climaxed yesterday, and he asks if it wasn't satisfying. Raywat admits that she's feeling scared. Kwon asks Raywat if she's scared. Raywat thinks to herself that she's afraid of causing problems with Kwon, but then reminds herself that their relationship is just a contract. Kwon tells Raywat not to look so frightened because he won't force himself on anyone who doesn't want it. He adds that he wasn't planning to get serious with her. Kwon says they should go back to their original agreement. He tells her to get some more rest, but he has some work to do, so he'll be out for a while. Kwon is practicing shooting when a woman named May calls him. She says that Choi mentioned Kwon is in a good mood, but it doesn't seem that way to her. Kwon asks what she means because he feels great. May laughs and says if his current expression means he's feeling good, then he should go back to the hospital. She tells him she has checked everything he asked about and is sending the data to him. She also complains about the slow network and says that Choi just logged in, so she'll connect him right away. Choi sees Kwon's face and asks why he looks like that. May asks if something happened between Kwon and Raywat and wants to know what their relationship is. Kwon explains that it's just a work relationship and says they should focus on their tasks. May then says the data transfer is complete and that they've found something new. It turns out that Raywat wasn't found with Ryu Seoyeon's body. According to the paramedics who were at the scene, Raywat actually witnessed Ryu Seoyeon dying slowly by hanging. May explains that Ryu Seoyeon had tied Raywat up and showed her how she was going to die. May adds that it's unclear why Ryu Seoyeon did such a horrific thing since Daesan has never officially explained it. May says that Raywat, the only witness, was deeply shocked and became very quiet after the incident. Raywat says it's more because she can't respond due to memory loss. Since Lee Jung-hwan was very protective of his daughter, the police investigation didn't uncover much. May also mentions that there was one notable thing during the investigation. After Raywat was discharged from the mental hospital, the doctor who treated her died a few months later. Choi says the timing looks suspicious. May agrees and adds that while the doctor is dead, the nurse in charge is still working at the hospital. Kwon decides he will go to the hospital and talk to the nurse. May says that's fine and adds there's another report about Loo Jin. She explains that after Ryu Seoyeon died, Raywat secretly drew some pictures. Lee Jung-hwan later found and disposed of several of these drawings. However, during the disposal, an employee stole a few of Raywat's paintings and claimed they were unreleased works of Ryu Seoyeon. These stolen paintings ended up being sold at an underground auction and eventually ended up in Loo Jin's hands. Loo Jin is a famous casino owner in Macau and was a big fan of Ryu Seoyeon. Kwon asks if Loo Jin might have confused Raywat's paintings with Ryu Seoyeon's. May says yes, since their painting styles are similar. Choi wonders if that's because they are mother and daughter. May explains that after Lu Jin bought the paintings, she realized they were too fresh to be Ryu Seoyeon's work. At first, Lu Jin was very angry, but then she wanted to find a perfect imitation of Ryu Seoyeon's style. However, the employee who stole the paintings had already been dealt with by Lee Jung-hwan. It looks like Lu Jin also discovered Raewot and even found out that she is Korean. Choi is surprised that Raewot is attracting so much attention, with at least 3 people targeting her now. May calls Lee Jung-hwan, Lu Jin, and asks who the third person is. Choi says it's Kwon, and then Choi and May start laughing. Kwon asks them if they're bored. May gives him the hospital address and the nurse's contact information, then says goodbye, leaving Choi and Kwon alone. Choi tells Kwon that he seems a bit off. Kwon says he plans to visit the hospital in 2 days, so Choi should look after Raewot in his place. Choi agrees but asks if something happened between Kwon and Raewot. Kwon remembers when Raewot said she was scared of him. He thinks about why she would be scared, especially since she didn't even flinch when he shot someone when they first met. There must be another reason, but he can't force her to tell him. Then he recalls when she said his eyes were pretty. Kwon thinks to himself that Raewot started it first. She was so cute and drunk that he couldn't resist. Choi asks Kwon what's wrong, but Kwon is lost in his thoughts. He wonders why Raewot was scared in the morning. Choi asks what happened, and Kwon says he won't drink anymore. Kwon tells Raewot that he has somewhere to go and that Choi Jung will be in charge of her care today. Raewot thinks to herself that after talking about going back to their old agreement, Kwon acted like nothing happened that night. She was worried she might have hurt him, but thankfully, he seemed fine. Still, she feels uneasy and awkward. At dinner, Choi starts talking to Raewot. He asks if she has any concerns, and Raewot says it's nothing. Choi mentions that Kwon is so strange that it must be tough living with him. He tells her that if she has any complaints or questions, she can always talk to him. He also says he can help with gossiping about Kwon, especially since she made him dinner tonight. Raewot says okay and tells Choi that the reason Kwon It went out today is to check if she's mentally ill. Choi says that's right. Raewot thinks Kwon must have gone to the hospital where she was treated. She guesses that Kwon is trying to figure out what's really going on after the chairman probably told him that her issues were just delusions from being mentally ill. Raewot says she's not asking Choi to believe she's perfectly normal, just that she's not as crazy as some might think. Choi tells her not to worry because Kwon It does believe in her. He adds that it's getting late, so they should finish their meal and head back quickly. Choi shows Raewot a faster route. Raewot says the road seems a bit inconvenient for this late hour. As they walk, they spot some men nearby. Choi asks Raewot if she brought her electric shocker. Meanwhile, Kwon looks at the hospital where Raewot was treated. He comments that even though it's called a hospital, it looks more like a high-end care facility. A man approaches and asks if Kwon It is him. Kwon confirms and then asks if the man is nurse Kang Jeonho. The nurse says yes. Kwon apologizes for calling him out like this and explains that he's looking for a place for his family to be treated. He says that someone he knows was treated at this hospital before and spoke highly of the nurse, so he wanted to learn more and meet him. Nurse Kang Jeonho understands and thinks to himself that if someone like Kwon, who wears luxury items, brings someone to his hospital, they would be treated like a VIP patient. Kwon asks Nurse Kang Jeonho if he knows Lee Raewot. The nurse says he does. Kwon then gives him a gift and asks him to take good care of his family when they're in the hospital. Nurse Kang Jeonho thinks to himself that the gift is quite generous and wonders if Kwon expects something in return. He knows that rich people often use the hospital for relaxation or to make sure their family members get special treatment. Kwon tells the nurse that since he looks older, he can speak to him casually. The nurse asks if that's okay, and Kwon says yes, adding that he'll be paying for their drinks. Nurse Kang Jeonho mentions that he's able to enjoy a place like this thanks to his little brother and that Kwon will see many things if he lives long enough. Kwon then asks if the nurse is drunk. The nurse denies it and says he's still fine. Nurse Kang Jeonho asks Kwon if his family is close to Lee Raewot's family. Kwon says yes, their parents are close, but he doesn't know much about her. The nurse then asks if Raewot is really doing well, and Kwon confirms that she is. The nurse looks pleased and says Raewot shouldn't have ended up in the hospital in the first place. Kwon asks him to explain. The nurse says he wasn't the doctor, but from what he observed, Raewot never caused any trouble like other patients. Honestly, she seemed normal, but there was something about her that seemed off. Kwon asks the nurse to explain more. The nurse says the doctor always gave Raewot strong medication. At first, even though she cried and begged to be let go, she seemed okay. But after she was put in isolation and continued with the medication, her mental health got worse. Eventually, she couldn't even remember why she was in the hospital. The nurse heard that she was admitted because of mental trauma, but it was clear her family forced her into it. The nurse mentions that there are patients like that. Kwon then asks if the doctor took money from Raewot's family to keep her locked up. The nurse says that the doctor in charge of Raewot has already left the hospital, so he doesn't know much more. Kwon says that the nurse seems to remember a lot about Raewot. The nurse admits that seeing Raewot tied to the bed became a strange hobby for him. He found it oddly provocative and enjoyed seeing her like that, but there were surveillance cameras in the isolation room, so he couldn't do anything more. Kwon asks what would have happened if there weren't any cameras. Before the nurse can answer, Kwon smashes a bottle over his head. Kwon tells the nurse to keep talking and asks how long he plans to keep begging. He steps on the nurse's head and the nurse apologizes. Kwon then tells him that Raewot will not be admitted to that hospital again, so he should stop looking for her. Kwon thinks to himself that if only the doctor were alive, this would be resolved quickly. He is certain that Lee Jung-hwan killed the doctor and erased Raewot's memories with medication. Suddenly, he feels a beep from his phone. It's a GPS notification for Raewot. May calls him and says she thinks Raewot has been kidnapped. Kwon is surprised. May says that both signals are out of range and they've gone beyond the set radius. She adds that Choi wouldn't disappear without a word, so this must be a kidnapping. Kwon says that if this happened with Choi by her side, the kidnappers must be skilled. May says she'll send possible locations. Kwon says he's heading out and tells May to monitor Lee Jung-won's account records, identify the kidnappers, and buy some time. May says she understands. At the place where they were kidnapped, Choi apologizes to Raewot, admitting that he's not good at fighting. He reassures her that Kwon It will be there soon, so she should hang on a little longer. Raewot says it's okay, explaining that if this were a regular kidnapping, it wouldn't have escalated to this point. She notes that the chairman has employed many dangerous people before, but this is the first time he's mobilized so many personnel. She adds that it seems the chairman is determined to see this through to the end. Choi looks confused by her statement. He tells Raewot that if her hands are uncomfortable, he can loosen the ties a bit, just in case she needs to escape unexpectedly. He moves closer and loosens the bindings. He asks if it's better now, and she says yes, thanking him. Then she asks why the kidnappers are fighting so fiercely outside while they're tied up. Choi says it sounds like they have different opinions due to a money issue. Raewot asks Choi if he's okay because he has seemed uneasy for a while, but it doesn't seem to be because of the kidnappers. Choi says it's because it's time for Kwon's crazy disease to relapse. She asks what he means by crazy disease, and just then, a car smashes through the wall. The kidnappers are shocked by the car crashing through the wall and ask who the driver is. Kwon It steps out of the car and walks toward them. One of the kidnappers asks who it is, and another says it seems they got scared for nothing. Then, one of the kidnappers' phones starts ringing. He answers and tells the caller that she surprised him. The caller, May, asks if the negotiator has arrived. The kidnapper is surprised and asks if the guy who rammed his car into the wall is the negotiator. May tells him that if he agrees, they'll double the money he received before. The kidnapper says the chairman just wanted him to destroy Raewot's hands. He was waiting for May for such a simple task, but now she wants him to return Raewot without even touching a strand of her hair for just double the price. He asks if it isn't a bit mismatched. May tells the kidnapper that she had to buy time until the negotiator arrived. Now that he's there, she asks if he can hear her and suggests he should do it moderately, but the kidnapper says he won't. Choi calls Kwon It and tells him they're in Korea and he shouldn't do anything crazy. Kwon points a gun at the kidnappers and tells Choi to take care of Raewot. Although the view is blocked, The sound of a machine gun and a piercing scream can be heard. After a while, Gwon tells Raywat to open her eyes. Raywat opens her eyes and sees a pool of blood on the ground. The air is cold, accompanied by painful groans. She feels like she is walking in hell. Kwon It walks up to one of the kidnappers and steps on his head. Choi Jung calls Kwon and reminds him that they have a lot to uncover about the mastermind behind this. He adds that Raywat is there, watching everything. Choi calls May and tells her he managed to stop the bloodshed, likely because Raywat is there, but asks what they will do with the mess. Meanwhile, Kwon walks towards Raywat. Raywat thinks to herself that she can smell blood, it's like slaughtering an animal. Kwon tells Raywat to give him her hand. He grabs it and asks her if he smells like alcohol, apologizing for getting drunk because he knows she hates drunk drivers. A warning siren blares in Raywa's head, like someone turned on an alarm. Her overflowing emotions have reached a dangerous level, signaling her to stop, but she can't look away. The man who crashed his car into the building to rescue her, who used machine guns and caused bloodshed in Korea, is now cowering, afraid of displeasing her for drunk driving. Kwon always seems carefree and relaxed, like he's wearing a mask, yet sometimes he shows a nightmarish violence. Raywat wants to explore what Kwon is hiding deep inside. She wants to know everything about him. Raywat feels an urge to draw Kwon right away. Her fingers tremble, eager to hold a brush. Kwon keeps calling her name, but she doesn't answer. He asks why she's silent and if her tongue is hurt. He tells her to open her mouth so he can see. She opens her mouth and licks his finger. Kwon pulls his finger away and tells Raywat that if she keeps looking at him like that, he might get the wrong idea. He's about to speak again when she holds his face and tells him that he scares her. He asks if she's still scared of him and if he should leave and call Choi Jung. Raywat shakes her head. Kwon wonders if, despite all his efforts, he scared her again. He realizes it must be hard for her to have a normal conversation with someone who just brandished a machine gun. Kwon asks Raywat if she's upset that he came late and apologizes for not being there to protect her. Raywat reaches for Kwon's face and thinks to herself that she's scared he'll ruin her and destroy the stability she has found. Even though she feels like she's falling apart, the desire to draw him is even stronger, like a moth drawn to a flame. It feels like there's no way to escape. Raywat kisses Kwon. Kwon pulls back, and Raywat tells him she wants to draw. Kwon agrees, and they head home. Choi Jung and May are talking. Choi says that no matter how he looks at it, what happened is beyond reason. He thinks they should send Lee Jung-hwan to the hospital. May agrees because she can't believe Lee Jung-hwan would send gangsters to harm Raywa's hands. Choi adds that the fear of Raywat going mad and possibly committing suicide, like her mother, if she draws, is beyond reason. Choi thanks May for buying them some time. May says the kidnappers are dumb. Since they offered double the money Lee Jung-hwan gave, the kidnappers split into groups. One group wanted to stick to the original plan, while the other took the double money, causing a pointless fight among themselves. Choi says one thing is clear, all of Lee Jung-won's claims about caring for his daughter are lies. May wonders why Lee Jung-hwan is being so cruel. She asks why he's trying to stop Raywat from drawing, even though her drawing style is just like her mother's. It shouldn't cause any problems just by making a few drawings. Choi says it would be easier to understand if they knew what happened the day Ryu Seoyeon died. May then asks about Raywat. Choi explains that when Raywat got home, she locked herself in her studio and started drawing non-stop. He didn't understand why, but it seems the events of that night inspired her. May asks what kind of inspiration Raywat could get from that night. Choi says he doesn't really understand, but that's how artists are. Then, May asks about Kwon. Choi explains that Kwon is meeting with the cleaning company that Schmidt set up. May is surprised and asks if there's a company in Korea that cleans crime scenes. Choi says yes, and adds that luckily it's on the outskirts, so dealing with it is relatively easy. May calls Sayu, and the man answers, annoyed, saying he had warned her not to call him that name. He explains that he met with Loo Jin first and that Loo Jin knows more than he expected. Apparently, Loo Jin was looking for Raywat even before they were hired, so blocking Loo Jin is getting difficult. Schmidt suggests calling Kwon It to discuss the situation because they have important matters to talk about. Choi starts to say that if there's a discussion, Schmidt adds that Lu Jin has offered some very favorable conditions. Schmidt, the CEO of the private military desert company, is the one making these statements. At Kwon and Raewa's house, Kwon knocks on the door and says sorry for interrupting Raewot. He tells her she needs to eat something because she has been up all night. As Kwon looks around the room, he wonders if Raewa's room is filled with drawings of him. While they are eating, Kwon asks Raewot if she really loves drawing so much. She says yes. Then, he asks her if she wants to go to Macau. Raewot is surprised by Kwon's sudden proposal. She tells him she doesn't have a passport. Kwon asks why not, and Raewot explains that the chairman doesn't like her going abroad, so she has never been out of the country. Kwon says the chairman must be up to something. Raewot wonders if Kwon wants her to escape to a foreign country because of the accident. Kwon says it wasn't an accident and is not escaping. He tells her she will go alone. Raewot asks why she has to go alone. Kwon tells Raewot that there's someone interested in her drawings who can protect her from Lee Jung-hwan and has the resources to help her draw freely. Raewot asks if this person is in Macau, and Kwon says yes. She wonders why he isn't going with her, and Kwon explains that she won't need him there and it would be a waste of money to keep him around. He adds that if she goes to Macau, he'll return the remaining commission. Raewot says she's not going. Raewot asks Kwon if he's joking about the commission and why he can change the conditions whenever he wants. She thinks to herself that she shouldn't get too upset. She understands that Kwon is just trying to do his job and make sure she's safe, but what's really making her angry is that he told her to go alone. She expected they would move together as a matter of course, even though she knows their relationship will end once the commission is over. Kwon asks Raewot if she knows that Lee Jung-hwan was behind the kidnapping. He explains that if she stays in Korea, something like that could happen again, and he wants her to be safe while drawing in Macau. He asks if her safety isn't the most important thing to her. Raewot replies that sudden changes can be really tough mentally, and if she goes to Macau, she'll need time to get used to it. She doesn't want to waste time adjusting, and she insists that she won't go alone, so he shouldn't suggest it again. Kwon pulls Raewot closer and asks if she would go to Macau if he went with her. Raewot almost says yes but then tells Kwon that she won't go. She decides to stay in Korea so he can keep an eye on her. She adds that if she gets kidnapped again, she'll cut the commission in half. Kwon agrees and says he'll make sure she doesn't need to go to Macau. Kwon talks on his phone and asks if the caller heard what Raewot said, that she won't go even if it means risking her life. The caller introduces himself to Raewot as Schmidt, the representative from the desert. Schmidt tells Raewot that he plans to come to Korea soon and wants to meet her in person to introduce himself properly. He asks if they can set up a meeting. Raewot agrees, and Schmidt says he'll get in touch with her through Kwon before ending the call. Raewot finds this interesting, and Kwon asks what she finds interesting. She says that Mr. Schmidt seems to speak Korean very well. Kwon mentions that there's also someone on Schmidt's team named May from Thailand who is even better at Korean. Raewot asks how everyone learned Korean. Kwon explains that May has always been interested in Korean, and Schmidt learned it because of him, Kwon. Raewot asks what Kwon did to make people learn Korean, and Kwon says it's natural for people to work hard when they want to improve. Raewot gets a text, and Kwon asks who it is from. She says it's from her cousin, Lee Sun-woo, who is the eldest son of Lee Hak-soo and the older brother of Lee Seon. Lee Sun-woo sends another text saying he misses Raewot. Kwon laughs and asks if cousins really say such embarrassing things these days. He adds that the world must be getting better. Raewot replies that Lee Sun-woo is just her cousin and they aren't very close. Kwon wonders if that's suspicious and tells Raewot to explain. He says it's odd for Lee Sun-woo to send messages like that when they're not close. Raewot thinks to herself that she hopes Kwon isn't feeling jealous. Kwon asks if Lee Sun-woo could be following Lee Jung-won's orders. Raewot realizes that this is what Kwon meant by suspicious. Raewot explains that her uncle Hak-soo is eager to get his son Sun-woo into Daesan Construction. Since the chairman only has Raewot, the adopted daughter, Hak-soo wants his son to take over the company. Although Sun-woo needs to prove himself to the chairman, he isn't like Lee Seon, who caused trouble. Raewot adds that Sun-woo is actually the only sane one in the family. Kwon asks Raewot what she knows about other people's feelings. Raywat agrees and wonders if Lee Seon knows about this. She thinks that Lee Seon was always overly fond of her brother and would probably go crazy if she found out Raywat is meeting him alone. Raywat remembers that Lee Seon and Kwon almost got engaged, and she figures that asking Lee Seon for details might only make her explode with anger. Asking Kwon would probably lead to the same vague answer as before. Raywat tells Kwon that she needs to meet Lee Sunwoo tomorrow. Kwon agrees with Raywat and says they should go together to see Sunwoo. Meanwhile, Chairman Lee Jung-hwan is watching old videos of his wife and daughter when he gets a call from director Park. He asks Park how things went. Park tells him the plan failed. The chairman is surprised and says Park should have been able to handle it by sending an entire gang of thugs. He asks if Raywat escaped. Park explains that all the people they hired are dead. The chairman is shocked and asks how they died. Park explains to the chairman that, according to the police, there was a fight within the gang. They argued and fought among themselves, which turned into a violent clash. One of the members got so angry that he used an illegal machine gun. The chairman cuts him off and says it's that guy who went wild with the machine gun. Park agrees and says it looks like Kwon It-'s work. The chairman says that they just called it internal strife within the organization. Park agrees and adds that, from this incident, it seems impossible to use force against Desert. Park suggests, though it might be bold, that the chairman should end his relationship with Miss Raywat. The chairman asks Park if he doesn't understand how important Raywat is to him. He says that Raywat is his wife's most beautiful creation, and if she were to leave, it would feel like his wife's presence has completely vanished from the world. The chairman adds that even if there's only a small chance to recover Raywat, he will try. Park says he understands. Kwon and Raywat arrive at the place where Raywat is supposed to meet her cousin, Lee Sunwoo. Raywat asks Kwon why he followed her and why he changed his car again. Kwon explains that since the last car got damaged badly, he bought a sturdier one in case he accidentally hits someone again. Raywat tells him to stop talking about bad luck. As Raywat looks at Kwon, she thinks about a boy she saw in her memories and is about to ask him something when her cousin, Sunwoo, calls her name. Sunwoo walks up to Raywat and grabs her hand, but Kwon slaps Sunwoo's hand away. Kwon asks why Sunwoo is holding someone's hand like that. Sunwoo asks Kwon what he's doing and pulls Raywat closer to himself. Raywat wonders if Sunwoo didn't hear anything from Lee Seon. Raywat tells Sunwoo that he misunderstood the situation and introduces Kwon It as her husband. Sunwoo is surprised. Raywat asks Kwon to say hello to Sunwoo, and Kwon stretches out his hand to shake Sunwoo's. Raywat then says they should go to the cafe to talk. She tells Kwon not to worry because Sunwoo is her cousin and Kwon shouldn't think anything strange or be too rude. Kwon says he'll try his best as long as Sunwoo doesn't have any strange ideas about Raywat. The three of them go into the cafe. Raywat thinks to herself that even though Kwon is sitting at a distance, she notices him fiddling with his sling bag. She worries that there might be a gun inside, and it's making her nervous. Sunwoo says it's been a while since they last met. Raywat agrees and says she's been so busy that she didn't get a chance to greet him properly. Sunwoo adds that even though it's been a few years, she looks just the same, still beautiful and cute. Raywat tells him he hasn't changed either. Sunwoo asks if that's a compliment, and Raywat says it is. She then asks when he got back to Korea. Sunwoo says he arrived the day before and adds that Raywat is the first person he came to see as soon as he got here. Raywat feels a bit pressured after hearing Sunwoo's comments. She asks him why he's saying that. Sunwoo explains that her personality hasn't changed at all, and he came back to Korea because he was surprised to hear that she got married. He had planned to return later, but came back sooner because of the news. He says that her husband is quite unexpected and asks Raywat if she likes someone like Kwon. Sunwoo thought she'd prefer someone more calm and quiet, and Raywat agrees. Sunwoo tells Raywat that, from his point of view, she and Kwon don't seem to match at all. He asks if she's under any kind of threat. Raywat says she chose Kwon herself. Sunwoo then asks if the chairman knows about everything, and Raywat replies that he does, but he opposed the marriage. Raywat thinks to herself that, even though she and Sunwoo are distant relatives, their relationship has always been more like competitors due to Daesan construction. It's normal for her to feel awkward, but Sunwoo has always been kind to her in the past and still is. She wonders if there's a reason behind it and thinks it might be best to just ask him and get it over with. Raewot tells Sunwoo that she has a question. She asks if Lee Seon has ever been engaged to someone. Sunwoo says that she hasn't been engaged, but he remembers that Seon almost got married when she was in high school. Raewot feels upset, but Sunwoo adds that the engagement was only mentioned briefly, so the chairman might not know much about it. Before the engagement could be arranged properly, the man died. Raewot asks how the man died, and Sunwoo says that the man was already frail and eventually passed away because of an illness, so the engagement fell through. She asks what kind of illness he had, and Sunwoo replies that he doesn't know. Raewot asks if there were other sons in the family, and Sunwoo says he heard that the man was the only child. Raewot wonders to herself if Lee Seon might have confused the person who died with Kwon It. Raewot then asks Sunwoo if he knows what happened to the family that Seon was engaged to. Sunwoo explains that this happened a long time ago, and he was in America at that time, so he was too focused on school to pay much attention to family matters. Raewot says she understands. Sunwoo asks if he should look into it for her and reaches out to touch her hand. Sunwoo says that if finding out about Seon's engagement can be an excuse to contact Raewot again, it would be a good reason. He asks why she's so interested in Seon's engagement and adds that she should at least share what she knows so he can help look into it. Raewot tells Sunwoo that his answer is enough. Sunwoo explains that he gets why she might not trust him given the situation with his family, but is still a bit hurt. Raewot apologizes. Sunwoo then asks if she's happy after getting married. She says she is, and he tells her to contact him if anything happens. Sunwoo says that while he was in America, he couldn't stop thinking about Raewot. He wanted to be someone who really suits her, so he worked extra hard. He feels that after everything that happened while they were apart, he shouldn't have left her behind. Raewot tells Sunwoo to let go of her hand. Sunwoo says he can't take it anymore and doesn't want to lose her like this. Raewot pours her juice on his face and tells him to get a grip and let go. Sunwoo apologizes, saying he's sorry and was just lost in thought for a moment. Raewot remembers her stepfather telling her that she was unconsciously copying her mom's painting style. He warned her that it wouldn't be good if people started saying she was just imitating her mother. He said he loved Raewot and didn't want to lose her like he lost Ryu Seoyeon. Then he broke her hand. Raewot gets up to leave, but Sunwoo calls her name. She turns and accidentally bumps into Kwon. Kwon smiles and says her performance was really touching. He adds that next time, she shouldn't just splash juice on Sunwoo's face but slap him too. Kwon then asks Raewot if she was scared when he wasn't around. He tells her that he's been watching from a distance. Raewot asks why he was watching from a distance when he should have been by her side. Before Kwon walks towards Sunwoo and Raewot, he thinks about what he sees in Lee Raewot. He has met many odd people in his life, especially in the mercenary world, which is full of nutcases. He has dealt with all sorts of clients, but Lee Raewot is a first. Maybe it's funny because she doesn't look the part but keeps doing crazy things. He finds himself constantly drawn to her, worried and thinking about her. Nowadays, thoughts of Lee Raewot keep getting in the way of his work. He can't figure her out. One minute she's scared of him, the next she's kissing him. Kwon tells Choi that he doesn't care if Sunwoo is Raewot's cousin. Sunwoo should have left him alone. Choi tries to calm Kwon down, saying Sunwoo doesn't seem like the type to cause trouble. Kwon insists that it's always the quiet ones to worry about. Then, Kwon sees Sunwoo holding Raewot's hand. Kwon tells Choi he might end up wrecking another car. Choi urges him to calm down and remember there are people around them. Just then, Kwon sees Raewot splash juice on Sunwoo. Kwon sees the pained look on Raewot's face and wonders if she's remembering something unpleasant. She then bumps into him, and he thinks of all the things he wants to do to her. Kwon tells Raewot that he can turn Sunwoo into a vegetable if she wants. Addressing Sunwoo as dear cousin, Kwon is told by Sunwoo to address him properly. Kwon agrees, calls him Mr. Lee Sunwoo, and tells him to stop tormenting the newlyweds and go home. Sunwoo calls Raewot and tells her there are things he still needs to say. Raewot gets angry and asks if he likes her, reminding him they're cousins and she's married. She says it's not right for him to contact her to meet alone. Sunwoo tries to explain, holding her back, but Kwon steps in. Kwon asks why Sunwoo is acting like this with someone else's wife and planning a confession in front of her husband. He hits Sunwoo's hands and tells him not to touch Raewot again, adding that her hands are precious. On their way home, Kwon asks Raewot to choose between him and her cousin. She chooses him. Kwon then asks if it's okay for him to break Sunwoo's head next time. Raewot says that regardless of what Sunwoo did, he's still the heir of DS Hotel. She asks why Kwon acts like he has no tomorrow. Kwon tells her he plans on living a long life. When Raewot starts to talk, he cuts her off, saying he doesn't do this with just anyone and expects her to understand. Raewot explains that when Sunwoo calls her Raewot, it makes her feel grossed out and fed up. She hates it when the chairman calls her that too. But when Kwon says her name, it feels different because he's different. Kwon stops the car and asks Raewot if she didn't say they should act like nothing happened, yet here she is talking about it again. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 3.